My sister publicly humiliated me and tried to throw me out of her luxury wedding. Then the resort director revealed I was the sole owner of the entire multi-million-dollar property chain. You don't belong at this level of venue. My sister said it during the rehearsal dinner, loudly enough for the Sterling family to glance over their champagne glasses. Her fiancé smirked beside her and added, "Stick to budget hotels." Laughter flickered around the table like tiny sparks meant to burn me alive. I didn't defend myself. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing a reaction. I just stood there and let the humiliation wash over me like cold tidewater. They thought I was out of place, a mistake on their perfect weekend canvas. But then the resort director walked up, leaned close, and said the words that made everything shift. "We need to talk, Allison. My name is Allison Hart, and for most of my life, my family treated me like the footnote in a story they believed only they were meant to tell. You would think being the oldest child would mean something: stability, wisdom, maybe even a little respect. But in the Hart household, worth was measured by shine. Whoever sparkled brightest won, and I was never the one they chose to polish. Caroline, my younger sister, was the family diamond. Even as children, she glowed. She had big eyes, perfect hair, and the kind of smile adults praised as if she were a star in the making. My mother built her entire identity around presenting Caroline as a masterpiece. My father played along because it was easier than arguing, and Ethan, our brother, found comfort in superiority. He was the golden boy, the financial prodigy, the one who looked down at the world as if everything existed to validate him. Then there was me. I grew up in the quiet corners. I was more comfortable with books than small talk, more curious about how things worked than how things looked. I was the one helping our grandmother in her small kitchen, learning the rhythm of brewing coffee and folding sheets tight enough to meet her military-like standards. She had been a hotel housekeeper her whole life, but to me, she was a master of dignity. She never raised her voice. She never demanded space. She earned it by showing up, by knowing the real weight of work, by leaving every room better than she found it. She used to tell me, "People notice the loud ones first, but they remember the quiet ones longer." I never knew how prophetic that would become. By the time I left for college, Caroline was already modeling for local boutiques. Ethan was mapping out his six-figure future. My mother was perfecting the art of reminding me that I was practical, which was her polite way of saying plain. I worked 3 jobs to scrape my way into the hospitality world. Front desk shifts, cafe shifts, cleaning shifts. None of it was glamorous, but it was honest. And it taught me what real luxury demanded. Not money. Precision. Patience. Consistency. Respect for the people who made beauty possible before any guest ever walked through the door. Yet no matter how far I climbed, nothing I did ever seemed to break through the glass box my family kept me in. They never asked about my work. They never wondered why I traveled so much. They never questioned how I suddenly lived in a high-rise or why I stopped worrying about bills. They simply assumed I was barely getting by. And honestly, I let them. Silence is easier than explaining success to people who only understand it when it comes wrapped in labels and price tags. Still, when Caroline announced she was having a luxury beachfront wedding weekend, it didn't surprise me that my mother's first message wasn't a warm invitation. It was a warning. "Please don't wear anything that stands out. Let the event shine, not you." Classic. So I packed my simplest dresses, tied my hair back, and told Daniel I would be fine going alone. He offered to come, of course, but I didn't want him dragged into the vortex of Hart family theatrics. I thought I could handle one weekend of polite distance, tight smiles, and whispered judgment. But the moment I stepped into the resort's grand lobby with marble floors under my shoes, coastal light pouring through the glass, and staff moving with the graceful rhythm of a choreographed ballet, I sensed it immediately. My family's eyes scanned me, measured me, calculated how I might embarrass them. I had no idea how bad it would get. I had no idea how far they would push. And I definitely didn't expect that by the end of that weekend, everything they believed about me would shatter. The rehearsal dinner shimmered like something pulled straight from a magazine. Gold-trimmed glasses caught the light. The linen was so crisp, it looked sharp enough to cut. Servers glided between the tables with trays balanced on steady hands. Caroline basked in all of it, glowing in a satin dress chosen to match the decor. She fit the scene perfectly. I fit it the way a loose thread fits a couture gown. Present, but unwanted. I hadn't even reached the champagne fountain before my mother's eyes swept over me, sharp and assessing. "Is that what you decided to wear?" she murmured, as if my navy dress might infect the room with mediocrity. I gave the safest answer I knew. Silence. But silence did not save me. Caroline looped her arm through Lucas's and floated toward me with the two of them grinning like royalty addressing a peasant. She leaned in, her perfume sugary sweet, her voice anything but. "You don't belong at this level of venue." The words came out smooth and practiced, like she had been waiting all night to deliver that line. Lucas didn't skip a beat. "Stick to budget hotels," he added, sipping his champagne, his tone dripping with effortless dismissal. A few guests pretended not to hear. Others didn't bother pretending. Someone at the next table stifled a laugh. Ethan arrived right on cue, drink in hand, smirk already in place. "Honestly, Allison, I'm impressed you made it here without getting lost. These kinds of places aren't really your scene." He meant it as a joke. He always did. Jokes coated in cruelty, polished just enough to pass as humor if I objected. Valerie Sterling, perfectly poised in diamond earrings, stepped closer just long enough to offer a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "It takes confidence to show up somewhere so elevated," she said. The pause before the last word did all the talking. Each comment was a shove. Small, deliberate, practiced. They were pushing me toward an edge they assumed I would eventually fall from. Maybe once, years ago, I would have, but not now. Not after everything I had built. Not after every sacrifice no one in that room knew about. Still, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I nodded steady and expressionless, and let their words land wherever they wanted. But when Lucas lifted his glass and announced loudly, "Family photos are next! Immediate family only!" That was the first cut I actually felt. He didn't even look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. I stepped back and watched them gather under the terrace lights, arranging themselves into a perfect family portrait they had always pretended I was not part of. Caroline tucked herself against Lucas. My mother straightened her posture. Ethan adjusted his cuffs. The Sterlings gleamed beside them. And I stood alone, with the ocean wind brushing past me cold and clean against my skin. That was when I noticed Jason, the resort director, watching from across the room. He checked his tablet. He hesitated, then he started walking toward me. Something in his expression told me this night was about to turn. The terrace was quieter than the ballroom, with the ocean humming below like it understood things people did not. I leaned against the railing and let the cool breeze press against the heat rising in my chest. Their words still echoed in me, polished insults wrapped in family smiles. I had grown used to being underestimated, but tonight felt different. Maybe because they were not just dismissing me, they were erasing me. Behind me, laughter burst from the ballroom. Caroline's laugh was high and glittering, the sound of someone thrilled with her own performance. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Staying silent had always been my shield. That night, it felt like a weight I could barely carry. Then footsteps approached. Soft, measured, professional. Allison. I opened my eyes. Jason stood beside me, tablet in hand, his expression tight, not with judgment, but concern. "We need to talk," he said quietly. My pulse shifted. Not fast, not wild, shallow, controlled, aware. "Not here," I whispered. He nodded and motioned toward a side hallway away from the guests. When the door closed behind us, the music dulled into a muffled pulse. Jason lowered his voice. "I'm sorry to bother you during your family's event, but there's an issue developing." I almost laughed. If only he knew the half of it. What kind of issue, Howard Sterling? His jaw tensed around the name. "He's been arguing with staff, questioning charges claiming we're upcharging uneducated guests." Jason hesitated, then added, "Maria is in tears. Jonah, too." A familiar protective anger stirred in me. Not the loud kind, the older kind. The kind you don't learn from books. The kind you inherit from women who clean rooms with pride and leave the world better than they found it. "What exactly is he disputing?" I asked. "Everything he personally requested," Jason said. "Late-night catering, upgraded bar service, the premium linens. He signed the approvals, but now he's threatening complaints, bad reviews, and demanding a meeting with the owner." Of course he was. Men like Howard Sterling never yelled at their sons. They yelled at staff. Staff who could not yell back. Then Jason lowered his voice even more. "There's something else." He held up his tablet. "The documents you requested. The ownership transfer. It's all finalized. Effective as of this afternoon." I let the word settle. I wasn't shocked. I had been waiting for that confirmation for months. But the timing was almost poetic. Down the hall, I heard Caroline's laughter again. Then my mother's voice, sharp and proud. Then a fragment of Lucas bragging to a group of guests. I imagined all of them posing for more photos, drinking champagne I technically owned, floating through a venue they believed they were too good for, and believing I was too small for it. Jason waited while I processed it. He didn't know the whole story. He didn't need to. What mattered was the question in his eyes. "Are you ready?" I straightened my posture. "Where is Howard now?" "Lobby. Pacing. He's demanding to speak with the owner immediately." My jaw set. "Then bring him to the executive office in 10 minutes. Jason blinked. Should I tell him who he's meeting? No. The word was calm, solid, and final. I stepped past him and headed down the corridor, my heels echoing against the polished floor. Each step felt like shedding a skin I had carried for years. Quiet daughter, overlooked sister, convenient target. They thought my silence meant weakness. They were about to learn silence had only been preparation. The executive office sat at the far end of the administrative wing, past a frosted glass door guests rarely noticed. Most people assumed it belonged to some high-ranking manager. No one ever imagined what it really was. The owner's command center. Quiet, polished, intentionally understated. A place designed for decisions, not display. I entered alone. The lights hummed softly as they warmed. The ocean stretched beyond the windows, deepening into late evening blue. I crossed to the desk, dark wood with simple lines, and rested my hand on the chair behind it. My chair. For months, I had kept my visits rare, my presence discreet, my ownership private. Privacy had protected me, but tonight, privacy was no longer just protection. Tonight, it was strategy. A knock sounded. Jason slipped in first. "He's on his way," he murmured, "and he's angry." "Good," I said quietly. "Let him be." Jason closed the door just as it burst open again. Howard Sterling stormed in like a man accustomed to being obeyed. His silver hair was perfectly sculpted. His posture broadcast entitlement before he even opened his mouth. Valerie followed him, her earrings flashing under the office lights. Then came Caroline, my mother, Ethan, and Lucas. An entourage pulled in by curiosity and the promise of witnessing drama they assumed had nothing to do with them. "What is this?" Howard barked, pointing a finger at me. "I said I wanted to speak with the owner, not whoever she is." Caroline blinked at me, as if she were seeing me for the first time. As if I had become a stranger sitting somewhere she never imagined I belonged. "Allison, what are you doing back here?" My mother stepped in, voice tight with embarrassment. "Sweetheart, you can't sit there. That's for—" Before she finished, I lowered myself into the chair. "This is the owner's seat. I said calmly. And I'm sitting exactly where I should be. Confusion flickered across their faces. Confusion, then disbelief, then the kind of laughter people use when they are desperate to reject reality. Lucas snorted. Okay, seriously, move. We need to deal with this billing mess. Jason held up his tablet. Mr. Sterling, she is the owner. Howard turned slowly, brows knitting. Excuse me? She is the owner, Jason repeated, steady and clear, of this property and several others. The room fell into a vacuum, silent, dense, heavy. I felt the truth press in on each of them as the ground shifted beneath their feet. Caroline's lips parted, trembling. Allison, that's not funny. It isn't a joke, I replied. Jason placed the documents on the desk between us. Bills, payments, contracts, signatures, approvals. Every receipt lined up in clean, undeniable order. The event upgrades you requested are all here, he said, angling the pages toward Howard. Everything you authorized. The owner wanted these ready. Howard's gaze dropped. I watched his eyes skim the first page, then the next, his confidence cracking with every line. Impossible, he whispered. I folded my hands. Do you need clarification? Because I can walk you through each charge. You signed for every upgrade. Premium linens, extended bar hours, specialty catering, they're all documented. His face reddened. You're price gouging. You agreed to the prices. My tone did not rise, not once. You also agreed to the terms. My mother found her voice again, strained and fragile. Allison, how? Years ago, I said simply. While you were busy worrying about whether my clothes were appropriate, Ethan stepped forward, needing to assert control even as the room slipped out from under him. You expect us to believe you own a place like this? You never asked what I built, I said. You only assumed what I didn't. Caroline shook her head, her voice suddenly small. But you couldn't afford. That's the problem, I said. You never imagined I could. Silence followed. A long, brittle silence. Howard broke first, exactly as I expected. I'm not paying these ridiculous charges. I'll dispute them. My lawyer will eat this place alive. I leaned back and met his eyes. You can try, but the arbitration clause says otherwise. Any dispute goes through our legal process. It takes months, and it costs more than the bill itself. His mouth snapped shut. You're threatening me, he hissed. No. My voice stayed steady, almost gentle. I'm reminding you that abusing staff and fabricating complaints has consequences. You made Maria cry. Jonah, too. You snapped at Kesha like she was furniture. Jason shifted beside him, jaw tight. Howard swallowed, cornered by a woman he had thought was beneath him. You insulted them, I said. You treated them like they weren't human, and that matters to me. The room watched. My mother gripped her purse. Ethan stood, stiff and silent. Caroline blinked back tears that had nothing to do with wedding joy. I slid a printed summary across the desk. Here is my offer. A goodwill refund of 20% of the total cost. Howard's eyes widened. Valerie inhaled sharply. Caroline nearly collapsed with relief. But it comes with conditions, I continued. The relief died instantly. What conditions? Howard asked, his voice suddenly smaller. You will write apologies to each staff member you disrespected. Maria, Jonah, Kesha. Direct, sincere, signed. He sputtered. Absolutely not. Then there is no refund, I said. And the bill stands exactly as you approved it. Caroline turned to her father-in-law, panic rising in her face. Dad, just do it, please. Valerie leaned close and whispered urgently, Howard, accept the offer. His jaw clenched. I won't be lectured by— This isn't a lecture, I cut in softly. It's a boundary. Another silence fell. This one was sharper. It sliced through ego instead of simply filling the room. Finally, reluctantly, painfully, Howard nodded. Fine. Relief cascaded through the office. Jason handed him a pen. We can provide the names. Howard took it with trembling fingers. Caroline wiped at her tears. Allison, she whispered. I didn't know any of this. That was the point, I said. I never needed you to know. But I won't let you treat me or anyone who works for me as less. My mother stepped forward. Honey, why didn't you tell us? Because you weren't listening, I answered. Ethan swallowed hard. We were awful. Yes, I said. You were. Lucas tried to recover some scrap of composure. So all this time you owned. I held up a hand. This isn't about the property. It's about respect. Something you've all been very comfortable denying me. No one spoke. For once, the silence belonged to me. I stood. You can go now. The reception needs the bride, and I have a few things to sign. No demands, no raised voice, just truth, clean and cutting. Caroline approached slowly like a child nearing the edge of a cliff. Thank you, she said. For the refund. And for everything. We'll talk later, I said. She nodded, her eyes red. One by one they filed out. Howard was last, gripping the apology letters Jason had prepared, his pride scraped raw. When the door finally shut, Jason exhaled. That was incredible. It was necessary, I said. Outside, the faint pulse of music drifted into the quiet. Guests danced, laughed, and celebrated a perfect wedding, layered over a storm only a few people had witnessed. I looked at the documents on the desk. Ownership, responsibility, boundaries long overdue. This was the moment everything shifted exactly where it needed to. By the time I stepped back into the ballroom, the reception was in full bloom. The lights were soft, the music was warm, the guests were blissfully unaware of the storm that had just rerouted the entire night. Caroline spotted me first. She broke away from a cluster of relatives and hurried over, still glowing in the way only brides do. But her eyes told the truth. She had been crying. Allison, she breathed, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry for everything I said, for everything we said. I didn't rush to comfort her. I simply let her finish something no one in our family had ever bothered to allow me. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I was so caught up in appearances. Appearances, the currency of her world. I know, I said. Just stop mistaking kindness for weakness. She nodded. For the first time in years, she reached for my hand, not as part of a performance, not for a photograph, not because anyone was watching, but because something real had finally broken through. Ethan approached next, looking more unsteady than I had ever seen him. I was an ass, he said bluntly. I thought I was above you. Turns out I wasn't even close. He huffed a broken little laugh. I'm sorry, Allison. I nodded. Be better. That's all. My mother came after him, slower, her pride deflated into something softer. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I just wish I had seen you sooner. I met her eyes. I wish that too. She pulled me into a hesitant hug, the kind we had not shared since childhood. For a moment, the years of distance did not disappear, but they felt less heavy. I found a quiet corner as the night moved on, sipping water and watching the glow of the room. Howard had already handed the apology letters to Jason. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. You okay? I looked around the ballroom. Caroline was laughing again, quieter now. Ethan was dancing badly. My mother was fussing over centerpieces as if nothing had changed. But something had. The balance had shifted. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I demanded respect. I typed back, "Me, yes." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. By the time the last song faded and the guests drifted toward the exits, the resort felt different, lighter somehow, as if the walls themselves had been holding their breath all night. I stepped outside onto the terrace and let the ocean air wrap around me. The lights from the ballroom glowed behind me, warm and distant. For years, I had wondered if my silence made me invisible. Tonight proved it had only made me underestimated. Caroline and Lucas walked past on their way to the honeymoon suite. She paused, turning back to me with a soft smile. "Thank you for staying," she said. "Really?" I nodded. "Enjoy your night. Start fresh." When they were gone, I leaned against the railing and watched waves break against the rocks. Steady, relentless, unbothered by anything thrown at them. Maybe that was who I had become. My phone buzzed again. "Daniel, proud of you. Come home soon." I smiled at the screen. If you have ever stood where I stood, silenced, dismissed, underestimated, remember this. You do not have to shout to be heard. You just have to know your worth and stand still long enough for the truth to force its way out. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this.